Hello and welcome to this summer session of EDEF 605, Introduction to Educational Research. My name is Greg Sherman and I am the instructor for this course. I'm also the course designer, and what that really means at its heart is that I was the one who made the decisions about what I thought was important for you to learn, or for you to learn how to do, as a result of this 5-week intensive experience. Now, I really enjoy thinking about what's important to be learned in the area of educational research for a couple reasons. One is that the skills that you're expected to learn in this class are going to apply, or at least should apply, to every single thing that you are going to be learning about as a graduate student in curriculum and instruction. And I don't know if you thought about it much, but your degree is a Master of Science degree in curriculum and instruction. Now, later in the class, I'm going to present a little bit of information about how a Master of Science degree is different than a Master of Arts or a Master of Education. But to me, the Master of Science degree is a set of skills that speaks to the science of education, the science of teaching, as well as the art of teaching, and the ability to do it well. Also, science is such an important thing to learn more about, especially at this time of our country's sort of history, our cultural history. It seems to some degree that science and scientific thinking is under a bit of attack in these culture wars that have been sort of slowly building over the last decade or so. And one of the things that this class is going to focus on for you is helping you learn how to think more scientifically. And that will translate into being a more effective educator, understanding some of the important issues of the day better, and hopefully, at least it's my hope, that it's going to also inform your ability to make really good decisions about what you think is important for your students to learn. So I think it's a very important thing. And as I mentioned, I think in our culture right now, science has been under attack. And I tell you, nothing was more disheartening to me than during the early days of the COVID pandemic. And there was a large movement of people who wanted, for some reason, were invested in disregarding science. And part of what I noticed about it is I don't think people quite understood. A lot of people didn't understand science and the scientific process. And also there was in my opinion, a huge degree of hypocrisy in the area of relying on science when it benefited you. For example, you could be an anti-vaxxer, an anti-masker, anti-whatever, but if you came down with COVID, if you contracted COVID and it was a bad case, and it was a case that required hospitalization, everything that you would experience in a hospital, especially a really good hospital, is absolutely grounded in scientific thinking, completely. From the development of vaccines to the development of procedures for keeping you safe and treating the symptoms that could be, in some cases, fatal, and this odd thinking that people who have nothing to do with public health initiatives or epidemiology, that there are people who were second guessing and third guessing and fighting against what was being recommended at the time to deal with a pandemic that killed millions of people worldwide. So anyway, this is such an important class. And I'll tell you, one of the first things that you're going to be doing in the first week of class as part of one of the projects is I'm going to ask you to be thinking about something related to science that's actually affects many Virginia educators starting in the fall of this coming semester. and that's the Virginia Literacy Act. And even if you're not a reading specialist or a reading teacher, or even if you don't teach primary grades, this act is still something that affects the field of education, especially for Virginia. And I'm going to read to you just one thing that one piece of text that's in the act. So the Virginia Literacy Act goes into effect in the in the fall of this semester, or of this year. And this is the first thing that it says in the act, is that every student in kindergarten to grade 3 receives core literacy instruction from an evidence-based literacy curriculum for the entire literacy block. I don't understand what all of that means in terms of literacy block. But I do think I understand pretty well what evidence-based means. And the more you go digging in what constitutes evidence-based, the more murky it gets in terms of the decision-making. Part of what I think the Virginia Literacy Act was grounded in was this idea that, number one, we observed a problem in Virginia, and that's that students were not, it appears, based on certain measurements, certain assessments, that many students were not growing as readers and as in their literacy skill area as much as perhaps we would want by the time students finish grade 3. Again, that raises a whole bunch of questions, but that idea that things have to be evidence-based is a really rich area to think about. And that's something that we're going to kind of get under the hood about in this class, is what in the world could evidence-based mean? And if you do have evidence, how can you tell whether or not that evidence is actually real or valid or that? So that's one of the reasons why this class is so important. Now, before you begin formally diving into this class, I just want to tell you just a few little things about how it's going to work over the next 5 weeks. So this is a 5-week class, and the class is divided into 4 conceptual parts, and that is going to align with what you're going to be doing for the first 4 weeks of the class. And in the first 4 weeks of the class, it's going to be very similar, and in that you are going to be presented with some assignments that involve some readings and reflections. You're also going to be assigned a project that relates to the readings and reflections, but also relates to the previous project for the previous week. And the project itself is going to be grounded in some of the really cool things that are presented in this assigned text. And I really, really like this book because it's very short, it's very easy to read, and it addresses the application of learning theory. And one of the things I think is going to be very important to consider throughout this entire class is that research leads to knowledge, and knowledge leads to the development of theories that can help guide and inform your practice and my practice. And I'll tell you that in part 1, I go into some detail about a story regarding my own teaching practice as a science teacher. I taught high school biology for about 10 years before I went into higher education. And during that time, I really focused hard on the application of learning theory to what I chose to teach and how I chose to teach. So that's going to so this book underscores the project development and really just the conceptual thinking about this class. Now, the other text that you'll have readings from during the first 4 weeks is a larger text and sadly more expensive. And this is Essentials of Research Methods for Educators. And I will say that the reading assignments in this book are, it's more dense, but the reason why you have this is that the readings provide context for the specific notes that apply to the skills that are going to be measured in this class. And I tried teaching this class recently without having a book that sort of contextualized the content, and I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be. So I'm hoping that the skills I want you to learn in this class that I think are really important are going to be aided by the information and examples and sort of thought pieces that are in this book. So again, each week in the first 4 weeks is very similar, and you're going to learn more about that when you sort of dive into the class formally. And before you do that, my recommendation is to click the button below that will take you to a tour of this course website. Because one of the things you're going to learn in this class is that I am using a website, external website to Radford University to deliver information and examples, including this video. And you're at that website right now. And if you've ever had a class in D2L before, you'll probably know or understand why I prefer to present information and examples and things in a website versus D2L, just in terms of organization and structure and usability. It's mostly a usability thing for me. But we are using D2L for a few things, and you'll learn more about that as we go. And you might have already logged into D2L and saw that there are only a few things are sort of on display there. So you're going to learn more about that as you go through, and I really hope that in the next 5 weeks that you have some level of a transformative experience in this class as it sort of undergirds your entire experience as a graduate student, and hopefully as you continue to grow as a professional educator.